What's up, everybody? J Heat 414 coming back at you with some more sports commentary. Just my thoughts, my opinions. Um, Wanted to let you know again, you can find me at the Vault JMU 414 on Twitter, talking about sports there as well. Appreciate your comments on these videos. Hopefully you enjoy them. Hopefully you're being safe out there during the current situation with the pandemic and everything going on. Be safe out there as it gets busier, as things are, um, as it's getting warmer outside and people are starting to come out regardless of what's being told or what's being said. Um, Wanted to address boxing. Been talking a lot about basketball. Wanted to hit another sports topic that I enjoy. I have been into fighting sports for quite some time, going back to my days of training in martial arts, which I did for close to a decade. Was into the martial arts as a kid, taught a lot of self-discipline um, and also confidence in yourself, teamwork as well, just like other sports. And I was always, when it came to martial arts, forms were always what I was best at in terms of what I used to excel at the most, or what they call katas if you are into martial arts. Can't remember not finishing first place in a tournament actually when performing katas, to be honest, when I was young. Um, in the sparring competitions or fighting competitions, definitely took a few L's there. Had some second, third place finishes, didn't place before, but nevertheless enjoyed it as well. Um, so I've, been into fighting from back then. Boxing was a sport that I really gravitated to as a kid because you really didn't see professional martial arts much. So I always paid attention to boxing as a kid. Boxing's come a long way. Um, you from the days of when they would fight until someone won, from the days of not having gloves to the real small gloves and the gloves of today. It's gone from 15 rounds to 12, and the competition and it's had its peaks and flows, and great times that people may reminisce about. A lot of times you hear boxing has fell off. I wanted to talk about the fact that boxing, I feel, has made a good comeback, and is continuing to be on the rise, and I'm hoping that it continues to do good things. There's a lot of nice talent out there, and I'm looking forward to it getting back in session once we get past this pandemic. Over the years, in boxing, if you go back in time, you used to get better fights from time to time because the best would fight the best, more so kind of like the UFC. However, over time, promoters took over, as we all know, and became more and more of the driving force behind which fights we would see and which fights we wouldn't, and the major networks being involved, big money getting involved. Iron Mike Tyson really took the sport off in terms from a monetary standpoint, and having the big pay-per-view fights and making the big time money. Oscar De La Hoya kind of piggybacked off that, kept that going, and fought some big time fighters. He was one that usually stepped up to the plate and fought whoever he could get in the ring with that was a big time challenger, and also he made money doing it, more so than people who had came before him. And then there's Floyd Mayweather, who took it to its ultimate heights from a monetary standpoint, but we question time to time his opponents, or at least when he chose to fight said opponents. Nevertheless, Floyd is one of the all-time greats, and so brings us to today. Once upon a time, there used to just be one belt, and we knew who the champion was in every division. And these days we have the four main belts that really matter, although there's all these secondary belts out there. But for those that don't know, you've got the IBF, the International Boxing Federation, the World Boxing Organization, WBO, the World Boxing Council, WBC, and the World Boxing Association, which is the WBA. Those four make up the four major belts. Typically, if you're in a weight class, if you got one of them, you're a world champ. If you got two, you're unified. And if you got all four, you're undisputed in your weight class. And as I said before, the promoters kind of are the ones who are regulating really who we see and when we see, although the fighters, I think do want to fight each other when they can. They also want to make money. It's a dangerous sport. Some guys go out on their shield, and sometimes some guys go out not remembering where they are, so because of the dangers of it, I understand why sometimes you got to put money first and timing of your fights in order to monetize the sport as well as you can from the athlete's perspective. And then also they're giving their cuts to their promoters. And a lot of times these guys aren't making as much off these fights as their promoters are. So then that factors into when and who they fight. From what I've been observing lately, the major promoters out there that are really controlling things over in the UK, you got the Hearns with Matchroom Boxing. You got Oscar De La Hoya, who has done his thing with Golden Boy out there. You got Al Heyman and his crew, which is Floyd Mayweather's group, who does a good job of more so than promoting, kind of being a manager of their fighters and allowing them to be a little more independent, giving them a little more opportunities to make their money. They're with Premier Boxing. And I feel like I'm forgetting one. Top Rank, Bob Arum and his crew. Bob Arum's been around for a long time, all the way back. Some of these classic fights you all might have been watching with Muhammad Ali. You've probably seen Bob Arum in the ring as he's worked alongside with Ali at times and been part of those promotions as well, but been around a real long time. So I want to talk about where boxing is right now. From my opinion, again, I think it's coming back. It's in a good place. Hopefully we get some real good fights coming up. And I just want to talk about some of the great fighters out there who I think, and when I say great, I'm talking about compared to their contemporaries. I'm not trying to get into how they rank all time and things like that. The heavyweight division, which is the glamour division, is one which everybody likes to see those big gladiators slugging it out. Hopefully we get to see knockouts is usually what we're looking for. Sometimes we get a little skill in there, but it's not like the smaller guys. And these days, you've got pretty much the age of what I would say is the super heavyweights. These guys are giants. Back in the 90s into the 2000s, you had Lennox Lewis, who kind of was ushering in that era, him, and then the Klitschko brothers. And now you've got some of the champions that are indeed what I would call super heavyweights. Of those guys, the four main heavyweights to be looking out for, I would say one being the American Deontay Wilder, known as the Bronze Bomber, very popular in the States. I hope that, he gets his self together in terms of getting back on track and winning. He is a exciting fighter to watch at times for people, because if you're looking for somebody who's going to put somebody to sleep, that brother has a kettlebell in his right hand, man. You got to watch out for it, because he will, if he catches you with it, even grazes you with it, chances are you counting sheep. So one thing with Deontay, very athletic fighter. You can tell just by looking at him, he's in shape, and he seems to have a little bit of stamina. Can move around a little bit in the ring, try to cut the ring off at times, but he's got some flaws that he's going to have to improve on. All fighters have flaws. I feel like his are more major at times than they need to be, though, one of which being just working his jab a little bit more. He needs to, use his jab more than he does and pick his hands up. If you pay attention to when he fights, he likes to keep his guards down, which can leave him susceptible to getting hit. He hasn't had to worry about that much in his career because, like I said, he's got a kettlebell in that right hand. And, I'm saying that jokingly, but, it wouldn't shock me if it's something in there. I'm not saying that like he's cheating. I'm just saying that's how hard that brother hits. His crew that works with him has talked about having to have extra men working the gloves when he's punching the pads, because He breaks guys' hands in practice while he's sparring, which is, you don't hear about that much. And according to them, they could be hyping it, but the way they talk, that's just how hard he hits. And so they have to have extra people because he breaks people's hands. But again, now that he's at a point where he's fighting some of the best, picking those hands up, getting that jab out there is going to be critical. He was a bronze medalist in the Olympics and has won every fight he's been in, although competition hasn't been nothing to write home about. His main two opponents being Luis Ortiz, who he knocked him out twice, but before that knockout occurred, it was questionable how he was winning. And then Tyson Fury, who he's got a draw with and lost to, and I think he lost both fights. That being said, Tyson Fury is one of the great heavyweights out there as well now. I didn't mention the Bronze Bomber being, when I say these guys are super heavyweights, his weight-wise, he's, only in that 218 to 220, 230 range. But he's like 6'7" with a reach, which is huge for a boxer. That's like a basketball player. And then Tyson Fury, this guy's 6'9", long reach, very good footwork. He's got good head motion. His head movement is probably one of the things that makes him a hard target to hit. Not a lot of power, but he'll work that jab, stick and move, combinations are smooth, and very accurate. So it makes him a pest for guys out there because of his reach, being able to keep you away, his height, and again, his head motion, making him a moving target. He's the best, I would say, boxer in the heavyweight division. Proven champion, hasn't had the greatest competition because the heavyweight division doesn't have the greatest competition in it at the moment, but it's, like I said, picking up. His big win was against Klitschko, which he beat him by decision. And then since then, after he had a hiatus due to some issues he was going through, he's come back and had the 2 fights against Deontay. But check him out. Also, you've got a guy by the name of Anthony Joshua, Olympic gold medalist. He is, I would say, the combination of the 2 I just spoke about in terms of this guy's, he's chiseled maybe more than any of them. But he doesn't have the head motion or the footwork of a Fury, but I would say his technical skills in terms of how he keeps his guards, his accuracy of his punches, and his ring awareness. He seems to be able to work the ring a little bit, even though sometimes his footwork is a little slow. Very powerful with his punches. He can box a little bit, and he can knock you out. So he's kind of the combination of the 2. And like I said, he has that Olympic pedigree like Wilder, and was a gold medalist in the Olympics. Definitely a tough opponent. Currently holds 3 of the major world belts, which he's earned each one of them by going out and beating some what would be considered the tough opponents in the division, one at a time, before he lost all 3 to Ruiz, who was a fighter who a lot of people might not have been aware of, but he had only lost once in his career. He wasn't a scrub per se, but one that was expected to not beat Joshua at the time. I won't get into all of that with that fight, but since then, Joshua has reclaimed those belts. And as we know, if you saw the Fury Wilder fight, Fury has the other belt. He also at one point had the 3 belts that Joshua currently holds, which have to do with his hiatus, that he lost those belts. And you can look into that yourself. I won't get into that too much as I'm going forward. But those are the 3 main heavyweights, and there's another guy by the name of Usyk, Ukrainian, who's come up to the heavyweight division. Also was a gold medalist in the Olympics around the same time as Joshua, and was the undisputed champion in the division just below heavyweight. He's trying to make the step up to heavyweight and kind of do like Evander Holyfield did in the 90s and show that he can be a heavyweight champ as well. he's got decent footwork. Ukrainians have a pretty good amateur program over there, and he's been showing out in his few fights he's fought so far, and got my eye closely on him. From there, if you like the pure skill of it, the sweet science of boxing, you want to look at the smaller guys. Guy by the name of Shakur Stevenson, silver medalist. He's coming up and coming boxer. Boxes with Top Rank, I believe. He is trains a lot with Bud Crawford, who I'll get into a little bit later, who speaks highly of him. I've watched a few fights of his, but I recommend keeping an eye on him. I'm not going to speak too much on Shakur, but he's coming up. He's up and coming, rather, and one to probably pay attention to. Two fighters from my area, in the Maryland, D.C. area, who I'd like to see get in the ring with each other. Tank Davis, they call Little Mike Tyson, known for cleaning dudes up. He boxes right now, I want to say it, I think 130, 130 pounds. His discipline has been an issue at times from what I've seen watching him, but he's got tremendous power, good hand speed, great boxer, and he's from the Baltimore, Maryland area, and I'm hoping to see him fight against a guy by the name of Gary Russell at some point. Probably won't ever get that fight, but I just want to see it because they're both from around the area and close enough in weight where maybe you could make it happen. Gary Russell, tremendous hand speed. He's from the DCPG area. Only fight he's ever lost in his career, and he's fought a good number of fights, is against a guy by the name of Vasily Lomachenko, who I will get into a little bit later as well. And Russell's a great guy to watch. Don't see him as much these days, but he's still active and still one to check out if you see he's got a fight coming up. And hopefully we can get him and Tank in the ring against each other. That'd be cool, Beltway brawl. Outside of those guys, I kind of want to get into the guys that I consider the top 5, in my opinion, that I've been paying attention to. You can put them in any order. Well, at least 4 of them you can put in any order, I would say. And one of them I would just start right off with, who I would give, if I'm going to give the nod, who's the best pound for pound boxer out there, would be Canelo Alvarez. Great amateur background, has come up through the ranks, been boxing since he was in his teens, I understand. I haven't been following him since then, but that's what I have been told. And he's a straight soldier in the ring. I have seen him come up and get better through the ranks. I do think, although he has a reputation for fighting the best of the best, he has the best resume, which is why I put him number 1. But I do see some flaws in his game that I would say others don't have compared to him, where I think some guys are a little more technically sound than Canelo, but I can't knock what he's done. I do think, he picks and chooses his guys smartly, as you should, and I'm sure his promoters are helping him with that. Early in his career, he was a guy who could shed a lot of weight and get down to fight in lower weight classes, and then kind of swell up for the fights and be a little bit bigger than the guys he was going against, which I think aided him in most of his fights. But nevertheless, he showed good skill with his, he's a counter puncher, good footwork. Over the years, it's gotten better. And he's got a granite chin. I mean, if you hit the guy, if you can hit him, because he keeps his head motion going side to side, you got to hit him multiple times to really hurt him. It doesn't seem like he gets hurt too often. Even when he was fighting Triple G, who was a guy known for putting people to sleep, he seemed to take his punches pretty well, which told me a lot about him. But Canelo's come up the ranks, fought from the mid 150 pounds all the way to the 160, 168, 175. Don't see him fighting much at 175 right now, because there's some thoroughbreds up there that he might, again, I say he picks his fights wisely. So I think he'll stick in 160 to 168. But he did show he could go up there and fight a former champion at 175. But we're looking to see him maybe match up against one of the Charlo brothers at 160, and see what he can do with him there, and maybe see, what happens if he does go up. into the 168, 175 range more often against those guys, and maybe gets up there before they move up or get out of their prime. But great counter puncher, quick hands, good footwork, and good at moving his head. So overall, Canelo, I can't knock anything about his resume, and so I will put him number one for right now until proven otherwise, till somebody get in the ring and beat him. He's the biggest draw in boxing, right next to Anthony Joshua at the heavyweight division in terms of the amount of money he pulls from the amount of fans he has coming to his fights. So definitely a guy everybody knows about, and if you haven't checked him out, do so. Other than him, another one of my top five, Mikey Garcia, a guy who I think is, he would be better served maybe at the 140 pounds or 135, but skill-wise is a counterpuncher as well, like Canelo. Is a machine in the ring. I think technically his skills are right up there with the Canelo. He's not that big, but very accurate with his punches, usually pretty good with his defense, and where he keeps his guards makes it hard for him to get hit. Real tight with his guards and then accurate with his punches. He is at 147 right now. Outside of two guys, Bud Crawford and Earl Spence, I don't expect Mikey to get beat at 147, although I think a lot of people think he could get beat by, say, a Sean Porter or Danny Garcia. I would love to see those fights, and I would put my money with Mikey. But you'd have to see it to know, and hopefully we'll get some of those fights in the near future. I know he's trying to fight the old Manny Pacquiao, who is still looking like he's younger than his age says, but nevertheless, he is starting to get a little bit older. And then the three guys I want to talk about that I think from watching are probably my three top ones. But again, I give the edge to Canelo due to what he's done in his career, but just from the eye test per se. Vasily Lomachenko, known as Nomaschenko. He's embarrassed some guys a few times. He needs to fight a few better opponents. And he hasn't fought many yet. He came in late into the pro game, has arguably the best amateur career of all time, being a gold medalist in two separate Olympics. I think his amateur record overall was like 399-1. Yeah, 399-1. I'll say that again. And the one guy he lost to, he ain't still looking for him. He found him and beat him. So he's beat everybody he's ever fought in the amateur ranks. And now in the pros, he's undefeated. He's made a few guys quit, not because of his power, but because of he was just embarrassing them in the ring. His hand speed, his accuracy, his footwork is impeccable to me. When I watch him box, it's not hard to see that his father putting him in ballet for a few years really did help. When he first wanted to box, his father told him he needed to take ballet for a few years first before he committed to really training him, because he thought it would help his footwork. Coincidentally, ballet has helped with guys in basketball as well. It's a very good sport to strengthen your ankles and work your calves and help you with your footwork and your balance. And he's a ballet artist out there. It's hard to hit him. He's so quick. Bob Arum, his promoter, talks about him as being the best technically sound boxer he's seen other than Muhammad Ali. And again, Arum has actually seen Muhammad Ali. That's high praise. But when you watch him box, and like I said, watching him make some guys quit who maybe had Olympic backgrounds or guys that were champions, he's made them quit solely because they, couldn't hit him, and he just continuously hit them. And it just got embarrassing for him, I guess, and they didn't want anymore. So check out Vasily Lomachenko. He's got a big fight coming up against a guy, Tomofio Lopez, who is an up-and-coming guy too. He's got the size and the power to possibly get the upset against Vasily, but we'll see how that goes. I'm not 100% sure he'll be able to do it, because again, this guy is so technically sound and so skillful. And if he wins that fight, Vasily being, he's talking about moving back down, which would be good because then it's some competition down there for him, like Tank, who I talked about earlier. And Gary Russell wants to get his hands on him for a rematch since he did lose that fight. And that'd be a good one to see. So keep that in mind. Maybe Shakur even meet him on the way as he's coming up and Vasily comes down. Maybe we get some good fights there. Then you got Bud Crawford. Bud Crawford, his mom used to, if you don't know the story, used to pay kids to beat this dude up in school. I mean, not in school, in his neighborhood. Used to pay him. This is a true story told by him and his mom. Kind of helped to make him the rough competitor he is. He used to get into a little bit of trouble, like to fight even as a kid. And when his mom would pay kids to fight him, he'd beat him up even when she paid him and tell his mom she need to pay him more, find somebody else, because couldn't nobody beat him, as he said. And to this date, I mean, in the pro ranks, that's been the case. He's undefeated. He was undisputed at 140. One of the best attributes about him is he can lead with either hand. He can fight conventional, fight southpaw, and do them both well. Watched him fight guys who were southpaws and fight them the entire fight in their style and look better at it than them. Very technically sound, power in both hands. He will put you to sleep or he will outbox you. He can do both. And he seems to be a rugged, like just he don't mind getting in the scrap. Really like Bud a lot. You could argue he's pound for pound the best in the world, just like you could Vasily Lomachenko from just a technical standpoint. When you're watching them with the eye test, these guys are technicians out there. And like I said, with Bud being able to switch from south to conventional, just makes him, it's hard to imagine people beating him even at 147 where he is now. I could see him going up to 155, maybe 160. But he's probably right at home at 147 right now for a little bit of time. And a guy to definitely watch out for. The big fight everybody wants to see at that weight class is Bud against the other guy that I'm going to speak on, and that would be Errol Spence. People call him the Truth. He calls himself the Body Snatcher. Kind of like that nickname because he does like to go to people's bodies and break them down. Earl's mama never, that I know of, sent kids to go beat him up for money. But he seems like he got a little crazy in him too when you watch him box. I mean, a guy that, he's one of those guys like you might have one around your way that that when they're about to get into a fight, rather than having a mean mug, they smiling. Earl got that sick smile sometimes, even when he get hit, like, he's like he enjoys the pain. He can definitely take it. Got a good chin. Not quite as technically sound as a Vasily Lomachenko or even a Terrence Crawford, but definitely right there in their class, just like a Canelo would be. He's an Olympic pedigree as well. Didn't finish with the gold, but still placed, I believe, bronze. But I could be wrong on that. It was either bronze or silver. But from all the stories I've heard following him, he had a pretty good boxing session in sparring against Floyd Mayweather that doesn't get talked about too often, but anytime people whisper about it, they talk about it kind of like they did with Floyd having a sparring match against Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker, in which they say Floyd got the best of Sweet Pea when they sparred. Now, Sweet Pea was a little older, Floyd was coming up, but regardless, those are the rumors. And with Earl versus Floyd, the rumors are that, not that he beat Floyd, but that he definitely held his own and gave him a go, not just because he was bigger or his strength, but from a skill standpoint. I know when he fought Mikey Garcia, the one loss Mikey's caught in his career, he was insulted by the fact that people were saying that Mikey was a better boxer, and if they were the same size, Mikey would just beat him on points. But because of the size, Mikey might get knocked out. So he got upset about that. Earl decided he was going to show his boxing skills in that match, and said it before the fight. He was planning to outbox him. Didn't really care about knocking him out. Now, people will say, yeah, that's an excuse because he didn't knock him out. But again, before the fight, he did say it. And I was shocked, to be honest, impressed at the skill. I haven't seen Mikey fight against some other guys, seeing what Floyd could do to him from a skill perspective, especially when I had been researching it coming up to the fight and seeing guys behind the scenes who had seen Earl spar and talked about the skills we haven't really seen from Earl that he doesn't always bring out. And when I hear Earl rather talking to people, he talks about how, he can fight different styles and how he likes to put on a show for the crowd. And so, he likes to brawl, he likes to box. He talked about when he was going to go to fight Sean Porter, how he wanted to make that a brawl, show that he could out-bully the bully because Porter liked to come at you and run you over. And I think Earl thought he was going to run right through him, or at least run through him inside of 7 or 8. And it didn't end up that way. It was a war. It went down to the wire, but Earl did grit him, out slug him in the end. And so, Earl's shown he's got a combination in his toolkit too that he can use. And so him and Bud will be a great fight that, everybody wants to see. Not 100% sure who wins that. I wouldn't want to put money on it, but if I was forced to, I would go ahead and take Earl because of his athletic advantage, I think, and him being a little bit bigger. And I think he's close enough from a skill perspective than more people realize, or than most people realize when it comes to the skill part of it. And like I said, he's got the size and the power. I know the Charlo brothers speak highly of Earl. They're in a higher weight class than him, but they claim he's the hardest hitter that they usually spar against, from what I've seen, or at least one of the hardest hitters. So they like sparring against him, the condition for their fights, and he's in a smaller weight class. So that tell you a lot about what he's got under those gloves. So those are my main fighters to pay attention to. Again, my top 5 being, I would go Canelo. I guess Bud Crawford, out of respect for what he's done so far. Then I would go Earl, followed by Vasily Lomachenko and Mikey, number 5. And like I said, it's a lot of great boxers out there. See who you like. Take a look if you don't already watch boxing. The Sweet Science is always something to watch. Very entertaining these days. And hopefully you enjoy it if you ain't watching. And if you are, hopefully you've heard of some of these names and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Let me know what you think. And yeah, I'll holler at you later. We'll definitely come back at you with some more boxing information. But that was more of just a general overview of where things are. Didn't really get into the guys in the lighter weight classes who have a lot of skill there too. If you want to see the speed and the pure skill of a boxer, the lower you go in weight classes, typically you'll find high skill, even if they're not as big as some of these other guys I've been talking about. But my favorite divisions usually from about 125 to 160. I like those the best. And of course the heavyweight division, just because those are the gladiators. So I'm hoping we get Fury versus AJ coming soon. I'm taking AJ in that one. I know everybody's taking Fury. And I'd be happy to take a couple bets on that. And then maybe we'll get Deontay Wilder coming around and Usyk being involved as well in that match. And we'll see who ends up as the undisputed heavyweight champ. The best division, I would say, though, right now is probably 147 and also the 160. 160 isn't too bad. 175 is probably my third favorite, I would say. No, I say go down to maybe 130, 135 in those 130s, but 147 for sure. A lot of great guys there, and hopefully we get an answer to Bud Crawford versus Floyd Mayweather. I'm sorry, Earl Spence, the body snatcher. See what Bud and him do. But holla at your boy. Let me know what you thought, and have a great end of your weekend. Talk to you later. J Heat 414. I'm out.